This is Ron Gutardi, Volunteer Director of the Oral History Program aboard the Battleship New Jersey, which is where we are today for an interview. Today is October the 29th, 2015, and we're here to interview Mr. Albert Michael Perna, who's a World War II vet. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his World War II experiences. Al, can we welcome aboard, Al?
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. And could you start out by just telling us how you got into the service?
Did you want my Army serial number?
No, we don't need that.
Okay.
Just tell us how you started, how you got into the service. How old were you and how you got in?
I was 21 when I got into the service. I think it was in July or August. It was in a warm month. And then...
What year? Do you remember what year?
Oh yeah, that was 42.
42, okay.
Yeah.
And how did you get in? Why did you go in the Army?
Because the rest of the guys went in. We were a bunch of guys and they all volunteered. Yeah. And that's how I got in. In fact, I went in to interview in the Marines, but they said I was too short. So then I went to the Navy, they said I was too short. But in the Army, I was just right.
Okay, so where did you go for your basic training?
I done basic training in California, and then I went from there. After I got my machine gun, I was an expert machine gunner, 30 caliber water cooled.
Where were you living at the time you entered the military?
I was living in Philadelphia.
In Philly? Okay.
2642 South, 2545 South Warnock Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had finished high school? And
No, I never finished high school. I went to 10th grade. I had to help my father work.
In what kind of work?
Plumbing.
Plumbing? Okay. So you went to your basic in California, and then
Yeah,
you went to advanced training with machine gun?
Yeah,
for
Fort
machine
Bragg.
Fort Bragg, okay. Then where to?
Well, we went to Virginia at Port of POE.
Mm-hmm.
You know what POE is, right?
Port of Entry.
Yeah, Port of Embarkation.
Embarkation, okay.
It was there. Shall I tell them the story about my year? Now, when the doctors was looking at it, and they were sending guys straight away, and they sent me in this room. And I said, why are you separating me? And the guy come in and said, you got a perforated eardrum. I said, I don't know a thing about that. I said, I got to go with my buddies. We all fought together. We all trained together. So I had to sign a paper that allowed me to go overseas. And that's when I went to North Africa.
So they took you with the perforated ear?
Now what happened in North Africa, when we hit the beaches in the beginning, Rommel came in and was killing us. And I said to the sergeant, Sergeant, I can't stay here, I got a perforated eardrum. He said, you're stuck here now and you're going to remain here. He said, you get back on the line. That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah.
Did the perforation in your eardrum give you trouble when there was fire and?
No, I had, when I was a young boy, my ear used to run all the time. But I never, and the smell was so bad, people couldn't stay in the same room with me. But brown stuff used to come out of my ear. And, but I never realized that I had a perforated eardrum, because I could hear fairly decently at that time. But when they examine you to go overseas, you have to have perfect ears, and I didn't. So that's why they put me in this room, and then I yelled like hell, I got to go back. So I had to sign a release order so I could go with the guys. And that's when we hit North Africa, and that's when I went to sergeant, so I can't see here.
Okay, tell us what the fighting was like in North Africa.
Well, it was very hot during the daytime, and very cold at night. And the thing that bothered us mostly was when the wind used to blow the sand around. because you know, just to get in your eyes, everything like that. And of course, we were with Patton at that time, and we went through Casablanca and a few other towns. See, they don't have streets over there, so you can't say I was on 6th and 9th Street or Broader Market. You know, you're in the middle of this desert. So that's the way we went from one town to another. And when we got to the end, and Rommel went back to Germany, and that's when they gave up North Africa between Patton and Montgomery. They toured them, and they were hot dogs, you know.
Hot dogs.
Yeah. They were trying to outdo one another.
Oh yeah, they were very competitive.
So,
So
anyway,
do you remember what countries in North Africa?
like I could remember one place because of Casablanca. That was it, and it was a bunch of towns called Saint-Jeanine or something like that, Saint-Jeanine Valley, or and a couple of small towns. But we never went in towns. We just used to go around them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Rommel went back to Germany.
Okay. Then we invaded Sicily.
Okay.
And
Did you have a break between chasing
no,
the
we were
German?
right.
Right to Sicily.
No, right. Well, a couple of days, you know, whatever.
Okay.
Just to do the transport us across. And we made the invasion of Sicily, and it only took 28 or 30 days for us to clean Italy up. And we used to use jackasses to carry our ammunition and guns to the mountains because it was too heavy for us. You know. And I was a 30 caliber water cooled, so that was a heavy gun, you know. So
Water cooled machine
yeah.
gun. Okay.
And that's what I fought for. That was my basic thing from the beginning to the end.
Okay. So then about 30 days you
Yeah,
cleaned
then
up
we got
Italy?
to Sicily, and I forget the big town we went to where they closed everything down. And Patton got there first, and Montgomery, he came marching up, and he said, "You want me to give it back to the Germans?" Yeah, that's what Patton said. "You want me to give it back to them?" You know, but Montgomery, of course, Montgomery was pretty well upset that
Patton beat him.
Yeah. Yeah. But then Patton slapped that kid.
What? I'm sorry?
Patton in the hospital.
Oh, then he slapped the kid.
He
Okay, the
slapped
famous
the kid,
incident.
and they took him out of action. He had to apologize to the whole division. And then they put him on a false pretense. They had tanks that were made of rubber. You could pick them up. Trucks, the same thing. It was a fake outfit, and the Germans figured he was going to invade the narrow part from England to France. Instead, you know, they prepared us for Normandy, which is a long front.
Okay, but how did you get to England?
Oh,
After Italy, what
After
happened?
Italy, we got by boat, and we went right to England. We went to
Okay.
Glasgow, Scotland, and from there we went right into Barton Stacey in England, and we trained there for 3 or 4 months for the invasion.
Getting ready for the Normandy
Yeah.
invasion. Okay. All right, then tell us about D-Day.
Well, what they did, this is a matter of fact, but it'll never show on the records because they took a battalion of men from the 9th Infantry Division, of the 2nd Battalion, of the 39th Infantry Regiment, and put them on the right flank of the 29th Division so no Germans could hit them from the side. And we only was there for a couple of days, and then the rest of the 9th came in. And it was only B+4 when we activated ourselves right into the division again. And we met with the 82nd Airborne and St. Mary Anglaise and Carrion 10. We met with them over there. And from there we,
In France. Mm-hmm.
and from there we went the different ways, you know. But we had cut off, we made a right turn. As soon as we got in Perna up in the Prince, made a right turn and cut off Cherbourg Peninsula. You know what the Cherbourg Peninsula is?
Yeah, roughly, yeah. It's near Normandy.
You're right. It's a big port. And all the rich people used to use that. Was the old pleasure ships went in there. I mean, we learned this afterwards, you know. And we cut up, we went right to the ocean, cut them off.
You were cutting off the Germans.
Yeah, you cut them off, and they gave up after 3 or 4 days because they ran out of ammunition and food. So then we went, I don't know if it's south, east, or north, but we shot up that way, and we went to a couple towns. Then we got on the Pierre St. Lo Road, and that's now I'll never forget. It was July the 25th when we were told to put out pink markers 2 miles.
Pit markers?
Yeah, for the airports.
Okay.
Pink markers, 2 miles long. And we were supposed to pull back over 150 yards. So when the airplanes come over, they'll bomb right in front of it, you know. And the first wave that came over, they done beautiful. They hit right in front of the markers. But then it kicked up a lot of dirt and everything, and it blocked out their visibility. And they dropped them short, and it killed a couple of our 100 men in our kitchen area. And a 3-star General McNair, was killed right there from our own bombs. A 3-star, he was there for observation, and he got killed right there. And after that, we shot around what they call a Palais Gap, and then after the Palais Gap, we shot around Paris, and we were starting to move pretty good because we had split the Germans wide open then, and we were getting on trucks and going 20, 25 miles a day on trucks. And then we dig in, wait another day, and then get another truck. And now we went through Namur, the Nod, and then one other town in Belgium. And this was in early September. And we were the 9th Division was the first ones that went into Belgium. That's packed. It was early, like September 2nd, 3rd, and we were already in Belgium. Of course, we were north of most of the divisions, you know. And we went to them towns, and we had to stop because we were running out of gasoline, ammunition, and food. And we dug in for 3 or 4 days, and then it was around September 30th when I was manning my gun, and they started a counterattack. And a shell hit near me, it destroyed my gun, it covered me with dirt, and when the guys looked at me and said, "Al's dead, let's pull back." And they left me there for dead. And I was picked up by the Germans by myself when I came to. They put me in the hospital for a couple of days.
The Germans picked you up? The Germans picked you up?
Yeah, well, because I was starting to move around. And I
Okay.
started to come to. It was daylight when it started, and it was like nighttime when I came to. And they noticed me shaking the dirt off me, like, and I'm moving around. I was in shock. And they put me in the hospital for a couple of days. Then from there, they transferred me to Limburg, Germany, which is a transit camp. It's a transit camp. And from there, they put you into different camps and different work orders, you know.
Prisoner of war camps.
POW.
Okay.
And then, you know, we went to different towns, and, you know, and I went from 145 pound to almost 80 pound when I was released.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you know, they had put, at one time, when it was getting cold, it was around Christmas time, and they put us on box cars. It was 1,400 men on this box cars. This is all factual. Only about 700 of us got through alive. The rest of them froze to death and they either froze to death or they were straight, because there was no markers on the top of the boxcars telling there were POWs in there. So they thought there was. So when our P-47s come over, they shot right into the boxcars and they killed a lot of guys. Now I was very cold, and I'll never forget that my fingers got very numb, and I got frostbite, and I was in a corner, and by the way, we were wanted water so bad, the boxcar had wooden sides to it, and the wooden sides would develop some moisture.
Condensation, maybe?
Yeah, and we used to get our tongues and lick the sides like that, so we'd get some moisture, and our tongues used to stick to the side and bleed.
Ouch.
Yeah, then I went in the corner and I crawled up like that, and we finally stopped somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it was called a Luftwaffe. Yeah, the Germans call it Luftwaffe. It's just for Air Force men. They kept them in a special camp, and they were treated very well. And the guy picked me up like a little baby and brought me inside, gave me some soup. He put me near a fire, and 2 days later.
Was this a German Air Force or an Allied Air Force?
No, it was a.
Allied?
No, it was
American?
It was called. I can't think of the name exactly yet, but it was a German POW camp for only
Air Force.
Air Force men.
Okay.
It was a special camp.
But what nationality was the Air Force guy who took care of you?
Well, Goring was Hermann Goring. He went to treat him real well.
Okay.
Because he was an Air Force, and that's why. And
but was it a German Air Force guy that took care of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was one of the American POWs picked me up.
Okay, so it was American. Yeah. Okay.
No German picked me up.
Okay.
And that's when I gave me a little soup, and after 2 days I began to get my bearings a little bit, and then shipped to different places, and that's why I wind up in different towns where our job was. When they used to bomb a city, and I'll never forget, they once called it the death of Dresden. Look it up. The death of Dresden.
Dresden, okay.
Right, you got that?
Mm-hmm.
It's near Chemnitz. The Americans used to bomb it during the day, the Russians during the night, and the English afterwards. Three countries firing on the city. There was about 80,000 killed in that city in 3 days. And we had to go pick out the bodies, and
that's what the Germans forced you to do.
Yeah, with forced labor. And we had to pick out the bodies, and little kids with no arms, and women that died and get killed, and it was horrible. But on the good side of that was, when we used to go to these towns, we would look inside of a trash can, and sometimes we would find a piece of celery with maggots running on it, and we should shake it off and put it in here. And same thing with a banana peel. We used to put it in here. Same thing with an orange, or anything that was edible. We would shake off the ants and everything and put it in here. And we should get back to the barracks, and we should eat it like that. We didn't show anybody else we had it. It wasn't feed your buddy week in that time. You know, it was self-preservation.
What about your frostbite? Did you get treated for your frostbite?
No, I never got treated for frostbite. No, I just see my fingers. I lost all frost from my fingers, and even some of my toes got a little funny. But they didn't treat us like they didn't have too much food themselves. They give us food, and
this was getting towards the end of the war, and they were running out of stuff too.
They used to give us a little cup ersatz, what they call ersatz, in the morning, and a piece of bread, about the size of half a dollar, and that's what we used to have for breakfast. In the afternoon, we used to call, they used to give us what they call, it was red cabbage. We used to call it red death, because you went in this way and come right out, in this way and come right out. That's why we lost so much weight.
Mm.
And we all had to use the same toilet. It was only a pan. It was only a little bucket. And 400 guys had to use that bucket. And after 100 guys use it, you'd slip in there up to your ankles and crap. And that's where we had to live. Because you didn't want to do it in your own barrack, in your own sleeping quarters. So you went in this room. And I tell you, it was a mess. The stench was horrible. And from there we got transferred to different places, and we finally wind up in a little town called Glasgow. And this guy, his name is
Emil Meister.
oh my God, I can't think of it.
Emil Meister.
Huh?
Emil Meister.
Yeah, thank you. His name was Emil Meister. He was a POW in the First World War, and he was in Texas. And he got treated like a king. And he wanted to do the same thing with us. So his wife used to make good soup for us, and that's where we lived. Until one day, we had 2 guards on us, and we got told by what they call the FFI. That was a Free French that was able to move around in town to town. And they had to wear this big white thing, FFI, in the back of them. And they got word to us, look, the war, the Russians are closing in, the English closing in, the Americans closing in, don't try to escape because you're going to get killed. And, you know, and certainly, sure enough, we woke up one morning and our 2 guards were gone. And we didn't dare go. By the way, they took all our clothes away and gave us wooden shoes. Yeah, and burlap bags. So they took all our phones. And
They took your clothes so they could use them, or?
yeah, they
so
used them in the Battle of the Belts.
Hmm.
They used them in the Battle of the Belts. So everybody, you know. But I don't know if anybody was as small as I was, but they still took. They didn't want to separate it and show anything, so they took everybody's clothes. And they had a lot of English-speaking guys, and that's the way they infiltrated into our lines. But we didn't know about this until after the war.
I don't understand Emil Meister. What was that the name?
Emil Meister.
What
Ask him what
what
he
was
did.
he? What was he? Was he one of your fellow prisoners?
No, he was a POW of the Americans in the First World War.
And what was he doing in your prison camp?
He was building, he had a little factory, and he was building 1-story houses for bombed out civilians. One room houses for bombed out civilians. And
He was shipping them to Europe?
they were shipping them, no, they were shipping them to different towns in Germany.
In Germany, okay.
Yeah, see, these people were bombed out. They had these 1 rooms, and it was 4 sides, the roof, and a door, and 2 windows.
He was forced.
Yeah,
Were
and-
the POWs housed in
Yeah, and
those?
we had to do that work.
He was
But-
forced
but-
labor with 20 other guys.
But
Forced labor.
we didn't mind that because it had anything to do. It didn't have anything to do with the war.
Okay, so you were building these, you were putting together these things.
I was.
Okay,
But I was
for the German citizens.
assigned to 1 German. Everybody, 20 of us, was assigned to 1 German apiece. And
And you built the housing for them?
yeah, one room houses
Mm-hmm,
for bombed out civilians. It's better than living in the street.
yep.
And
But what were you staying in at that time?
we had a little house. A little house about 2 blocks away from the factory. And we used to march up on these cobblestones with the guards alongside us. Because you start walking by yourself, the people come out and hit you with brooms and kill you. So that's where we stayed. And this was one old guy And he used to leave his rifle right there. We could have taken a rifle any time. And there was another guy, a young guy, with one arm missing. They were our two guards. And they both altered it. They altered with one another.
Alternated? Okay.
Yeah. And one day, we woke up to go to work, and they were gone. And we didn't know what the hell to do. So we got down the cellar, because we could hear in the distance small arms fire and lots of big shells coming over. So we stayed down in the cellar, and the first thing you know, we looked out the street, and here comes an American thing, and another American, And when about 20 of them went through, we yelled out, "Don't shoot! We're Americans, we're coming out." The guy said, "Wait a minute, stay right where you're at." They put a machine gun on us. And we had to come back with our hands up like that, and from there they interrogated us. And they found out, they said, "You're not an American, where's your uniform?" And that's how then we went from there. They put us in the Camp Lucky Strike to rehabilitate ourselves. I was there for 30 days. Then they shipped me back to the States. Yeah.
And when was this?
This was very late, say around, it was still, the war was still on.
It was
Germany
1945.
and Japan.
Was it spring? Spring
Yeah,
of 45?
Yeah, the Germans and the Japanese hadn't given up yet. And
The Germans didn't give up until April.
Right.
So this was before April?
no, April,
April 15th.
April is when they gave up.
Yeah.
And the Japanese came in later, right?
The Japanese gave
Yeah.
up in August.
Yeah,
45.
yeah, that's when
He was
Herman Goring went in and signed some papers, or one of the guys from U-2 U-boats, one of the captains from U-boats, he'd come in and sign the unconditional surrender. I don't know, I didn't know at that time. I read about it in books afterwards.
So how long were you a prisoner?
Exactly 100, I was a prisoner 185, from September 30th till April 15th.
Okay.
So it's 6.5 months exactly.
And that was, so April the 15th was just about the end of the war, right there. Okay,
Yeah.
in Germany anyway, in Europe. Okay, so then they shipped you home.
Yeah. When they shipped me home, I was still weak. And they sent me down to Georgia to help train guys that was going to, by that time, Germany had given up. And we were training guys to
Go to the
invade
Pacific.
Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so weak on the great parade grounds, when I was given close orders drill, I more or less collapsed. And they put me in the hospital, and I didn't want to stay in the hospital. So I asked, and they said, if you want to go home, you have to sign this here that we're not going to take care of you no more. We're not responsible for you no more. So that's what I did.
So did they give you an early out in effect?
Well, it wasn't an early out. I mean, I had the points to get out.
Okay.
I had the points to get out. It just, it's just that,
You don't want to stay in the hospital.
I think that would just about include everything I can remember, you know.
So what'd you do after the war?
What did I do after the war?
Yeah.
Well, when the guy discharged me, he gave me the ruptured duck. You know what the ruptured duck was?
No. What is that?
It's a pin that went on your right side. I think it's in there.
You got it on your hat. Yeah. We'll look at it later.
Is it in there?
I don't know. We'll look at it later.
Okay. So they gave you the ruptured duck.
Yeah, it's a little pin.
Okay.
And then you got an honorable discharge. And the guy said, go back to work. So I went right back to work.
Where is
I went
that?
back to work at Cattle Soup because that's where I got a job because my father couldn't get any material to do plumbing because everything was
Okay.
going through the war.
Okay.
So,
Had you worked at Campbell Soup before you went into the service?
yeah, for about 9 months.
Okay.
And then when we went into the service, they put me down as an honorary member, and when I got out 3 years later, I had accumulated almost 4 years of seniority, and I went to my father to help me out, and he said, "No, you get a good pay on Friday, stay there." So I stayed there for 27 years. Yeah, but I was doing plumbing and doing other work beside, and more or less I became my main thing was being a plumber.
Is that what you did for Campbell's Soup too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I quit Campbell's Soup. Now,
He worked in the noodle.
Where?
Noodles. He made
Oh, noodles. Noodle maker? Were you a noodle maker for Campbell's Soup? Were you a noodle maker?
no, yeah, I used to make the chicken noodles. We used to
Chicken
make
noodle
the
soup.
dough. Yeah, it was a room that was set up by itself. It was in glass, and it could only be certain temperature in that room, so the moisture wouldn't stick around the dough. And we've done that for quite a few years, and one day I decided that I didn't want to stay there no more, and I started doing plumbing on my own. I went for my master's, I got that, and from there I done very well as a plumber. Yeah, yeah, and that's my life up until this time. But one thing I want to inject.
You want a drink of water?
No, thank you. For 55 years, I didn't know anything about no pensions, no VA, no nothing. I paid for my own house. I paid for my daughter's glasses, her teeth, everything that they had. My wife's, all my wife's medicine, I paid it out of my pocket. And then I belonged to this POW outfit, and I heard a girl say, "What's your rating?" I said, "What do you mean? I don't know what you mean by a rating." This is the year 2000 now. 55 years have gone by. The guy said, "You're at a POW meeting. There's nothing but POWs. You've got to be at least 60 or 70% as a POW. Especially if you're over 30 days." Well, I was 6.5 months. And this president took me to the side. He got a big sheet, and he marked off different things for me. They brought me down to Wissahickon Avenue, and when the guy looked at my records and everything, he said, "What the hell were you waiting for?" I said, "I didn't know. Nobody told me anything about the VA or anything. I didn't know where the VA was, and it was only 5 minutes from my house." And but after that, they gave me 100%. They gave me a good pension, and that's where I've been living ever since.
So they gave you medical care too? And...
Oh, I don't have no more doctors on the outside.
Okay.
From my toes to my head. Every doctor's.
Did they give you back pension pay or just?
They gave me $20,000 back pay, but they couldn't go back to 45 because the government would belong to me then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, with interest.
And,
yeah.
But one time we went to a meeting, I never forget this, and the guy said, "If anybody has got any medicine that they bought," I said, "Yeah, my wife is." What was that place on 18th and Oregon? It was a drugstore.
CVS.
Huh? CVS. So we went there, we got the records, she said, "I'll give you the records for 4 years." And it came to $2,300. We showed it to them, they gave me a check for $2,300.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, it was a good deal. Yeah.
All right, ladies, can you hand him some of the stuff so we can film some of that? Introduce your daughter to us, for us, would you please?
I'm Debbie Vanilla, and I'm Al's youngest daughter.
And I am Pat Onset, and I'm Al's older daughter.
Somebody went to look and see what I looked like when I was, there it is, right there.
Okay, I'm going to kind of try and come in a little closer on that picture. Handsome guy, wasn't he?
Oh,
Very
yeah.
handsome. Pearly white teeth. and a nice head of hair.
Okay, and now, Al, tell us what you're holding.
Tell us about your medals.
Well, I mean, I got the Purple Heart. I got the Good Conduct Medal. I got the Overseas Medal. I got the POW medal. And I got one of these medals down here. A French consulate came in to VA one day, and when anybody was in D-Day, and I happened to be one of them, and they gave us this one medal down here.
All right, yeah, I heard earlier that you were wounded a couple of times during the war.
3 times.
3 times. Tell us about those, would you please?
Well, one was in my shoulder.
Where did you get what country were you
I
in?
was in North Africa.
North Africa.
Yeah.
In your shoulder, and where else?
None of my wounds were life-threatening, and they would patch me up and push me right back to the lines again. Then I got a little bit wounded in France and Sicily, and then I got hit my stomach in somewhere in France. I don't remember where.
And the
But none of them were life-threatening.
And the
Okay.
third one?
And they would send me back on the lines again to study the replacements. Yeah.
And what was your third injury? Your frostbite?
Huh?
Your third injury?
Yeah.
Frostbite?
You
Frostbite?
can see his fingers.
Yeah, frostbite.
See his nails.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything else to show us?
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to show you this here one thing. When I went to the Rotary Club about 3 weeks ago, you got to read this here.
It says, "This is what honor looks like."
And they made it, it's a beautiful card.
You got to read this card.
All right, let me focus on it. Okay. This is what honor looks like. Okay, that's nice. That's a nice story.
Read that card.
Can you?
I can't read it from here, but
Okay,
can you
can
read
I?
it?
Sure.
Can you read it to us,
It says,
please?
"Dear Al, thank you so much for speaking to us at the Trenton Rotary Club last week. Many members said you were the most inspiring speaker in recent memory. Thank you too for your service and your courage and for your willingness to share your experiences. I enjoyed our time together. Fondly, Glenn Paul," and that was October 7th, 2015.
And what group was this? A VFW?
Rotary
The
Club.
Trenton Rotary
Oh,
Club.
Trenton Rotary Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was about 50 people in there.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and I spoke for about 45 minutes, and you could hear a pin drop.
Anything else you want to show us?
Did you want to?
Well, you know, I don't know whether it's got the see if it's got the what's the name? That's it. That thing was right there. Yeah. This is what they call a morning report, and my name is on there. To show them where my name is, and I was this when I was listed as a POW as a mission in action.
I don't know if you can see it. This is his name here, Perna Albert,
Okay, great.
MIA.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
called a
Max.
morning report.
Okay.
Did you want to tell him that, Ron, that how your mom found out you were alive? Because at that time, nobody ever, you were always MIA, never POW. You were always listed as MIA.
Yeah.
And tell Ron how your mom found out you were alive.
Okay. Well, see, every month my mother used to get. I didn't have a girlfriend at that time, and my mother used to get a telegram that we're still listening to this MIA. We're not closing the case. We're not closing the case on it. And at the end of 6.5 months, when I got released, I noticed the division patch, and there was a friend of mine in that outfit. So I went and seen him, and he said, "I thought you were dead." So I wrote him a letter. He sent it to his girlfriend at home. The girlfriend took it to my mother and showed it to my mother. And my mother noticed that I misspelled. Oh, I used to misspell the one word all the time. And said, "Oh, my son is alive." Yeah, and then after that, you know, and that's the only way they knew I was alive at 6.5 months. Yeah.
So when did official word come through the Army that you were alive? How much later?
When I was officially with the Army,
No. When did official word from the Army come to your mother?
it never came.
Never.
Never
Never
did.
came. No.
That's amazing.
Never came. My mother used to keep all the telegrams, but there was no word that I was released until I called when we got to when we landed near the big statue.
Statue
In
of
New York?
Liberty?
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty. I got down and kissed the ground. I called my mother on the phone right away, and she met me halfway. And you know, we got together, and then we went back. And
Where was your mother living at the time? In Camden?
Yeah, no, she was in Philly.
In Philly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I told you, 2545 South Warlock Street. Yeah, yeah.
One of the things I would like to say is when he came home, this was, I don't know, maybe after the hospital or something, he came home with a cab. And he came up the street and all the houses were decorated and red, white, and blue ribbons. And he said to the cab driver, boy, somebody important must be here. You know, he didn't know it was for him. So those guys were very humble. It's a humble group.
Okay.
And then many years later, my sister and her husband accompanied my mom and dad and retraced his steps through Europe, starting in Normandy, at Omaha Beach, and then all the way through where he
Where I
fought,
got captured.
all the way into Germany where he was captured, and then they revisited the village where he was kept prisoner. That last part of his being a prisoner, where he was kept in this house, and that he was forced labor in building these homes for German citizens. And they met the daughter.
He was 2 years old at the time.
But they met the daughter, and the daughter was still living in the house that he was kept prisoner, and the workshop that they worked in was actually, look up that, the workshop was still there with all the equipment and everything.
And he
right?
could pick out exactly where he actually did the, it was a
My cubicle.
production line, his
The
own
little cubicle that I worked in. We all worked in different cubicles. They were like separated by little boards, you know. And I showed them exactly where I was working all the time. And up there, you know. But
Imagine, that all of that was still there.
Well, when that
After-
wall went up, progress stopped, and you could still see the Siegfried line. They never moved that. The factory was exactly the way it was. There were bullet holes all over the place going when we drove through all the different towns. Or, I mean, just there was no progress on that side of the.
What
of
year
the
was
wall.
this?
About, I'd say, 15 years ago. My mother was still alive, so it was 15 years ago. And we went through a lot of trouble because we don't speak German. My father doesn't either, and we wanted to see if he really wanted to go and thank Emil Meister for keeping him alive and his wife. And of course, they were both deceased. But we found out from we had an historian there. We met an historian, and he took us all around. And Maria didn't speak English. That's the daughter, and Daddy doesn't speak German. But there was communication. Everybody was crying and hugging, and she invited us in the home, and he was never allowed in the home. He was a prisoner. He just went from his prison building that he lived in to the factory. And they were wealthy people, but the Germans took over their place, and they just, that was it. But anyway, she was really sweet to us and gave us a beautiful lunch. And they took a lot of information from my dad, the historian. And remember that, Dad?
yeah. In fact, one of the guys from the Library of Congress interviewed me one time. I had his card at home. Our little dog ate it. Ate the card.
They have a little dog.
Yeah, he had the cards. And the little dog ate the cards.
Al, this interview will be going to the Library of
Great,
Congress
thank you.
and also to the New Jersey State Library.
Very good.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
And just, I know he didn't spend too much time on the actual D-Day invasion, but he kind of just moved over it. But he was there in the thick of it, and landed right in the first wave, and fought all across the beach and up the bulkheads. And
That was one of the things that he remembered. When we got to Omaha Beach and you looked up, Did you want to tell that story when we took you back to,
Okay.
we took you back to Omaha Beach? And you looked up and you said you saw the hill?
Yeah.
What, you want to tell them
Tell
about
us,
it?
tell us, let him tell us about it.
One of the buildings was still up there, and it had a lot of holes in it, you know. It was still up there. Can you imagine that?
This was where, on Omaha Beach?
Yeah, right at the top of the hill. Yeah.
Okay, what else do you remember about the D-Day?
I see. I don't want to knock down a Navy. I'm going to tell you. Even our General Bradley put a big article in the paper. I got the paper right here. When they put us in these boats to bring us ashore, they were supposed to drop it on the sand. Some of them did, some of them didn't. Some of them got very scared, and they dropped it in 5 feet of water. And the guys come out and drowned. Because it was 4 or 5 feet of water, and the waves are so big, and they just swept over, and they didn't know what was up and down.
And they're carrying heavy packs too, and
Yeah, and General Bradley said the Navy was at fault, because these guys wasn't trained right. But the poor guys were fighting for their own lives, you know. Yeah. Now, thank God, when they dropped mine, I got out. I was only maybe a foot up here, and then I fell with sand. And I got behind one of them arm bars that they put up to stop anything coming in. And I was so small, and I never moved from that damn spot. And so the guy said, "Go, let's go." I said, "I'm not moving." And I stayed right there for a few hours until one of the ships come in and start killing, putting a lot of heavy weapons into where these bunkers were. And when they did that, when they knocked them out, then we got out and we start moving out. Yeah, yeah. But
did you lose a lot of buddies that day? Did you lose a lot of your friends that day?
Oh my God, they wiped us out. They wiped us out. Later on, we formed the what they call 9th Infantry Division Association, and we had a Delaware Valley chapter. We had chapters all over the United States. We had about 130 men in there. Now, there's maybe 1 or 2 left out of the 130 guys. You know, I'm 94, and a lot of guys are in the service a couple months before me, and they're 95 and 100. And some of them guys that are still living, they don't know where they're going. You know, they don't have it up here anymore. So that's why. And when you see somebody like me, you better grab what you can from me, because when I die, a lot of that war is going to go with us.
That's why you're here today.
Yeah. I realize that. Yeah.
This is to collect the memories.
You know, there were 16 million men under arms from the day the war broke out till the day it ended. And according to the last report, there's less than 1 million men still living out of the 16 million. The rest has already passed on. But that's the way, that's what happens, you know. We're all going to die from something.
Al, we're going to start wrapping up now. What did your service do for you? What impact did it have on your life?
I tell you, I love the service because I got a good meal, I got clean clothes, and you know, and I got all the utensils, the toothbrush. I never got that at home. Yeah, yeah. But
would you recommend military service for our young people?
absolutely. I recommend anybody should have at least 2 years just to learn how it is. They don't have to go overseas, you know, but I don't think my daughters would appreciate that.
All right, Al. Thank you. We appreciate your service, of course, but we also appreciate your taking the time to come here to the
my
Battleship
pleasure.
New Jersey today and tell us about your war experiences. And thank you again, and thank you to your daughters Debbie and Patty for their bringing you here and helping us out with the interview. So I'm going to sign off now. This is Ron Gucciardi, Volunteer Director of the Oral History Program of the Battleship New Jersey, which is where we are today, and today is October 29th, 2015. Thanks again.
I just want to say one thing. God bless America.
Very good. Thank you, Al.